Have you guys not heard the devil's fan thing? It was meant to make guys feel okay about masturbation. Like men are supposed to masturbate.
Yeah, because you're keeping the devil cool in hell.
Hello, listeners. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you also for bearing with me through this hiatus. There was just a lot going on the last few months. And then my husband and I both injured ourselves very badly. I sprained my ankle very badly. He tore his meniscus and we were both bedridden, and they were separate injuries. It's not like we got in a car accident or anything like that. We were literally just walking at different times. So we had to find someone to help us around the house, and it's just been chaos over here. But I am finally able to stand and move around with not excruciating pain. So I've gotten back to recording and editing podcasts, and here we are. So this podcast with Lauren, we actually recorded a few months ago, and then, chaos ensued. So I'm so excited to finally get this episode out. It's so good. Lauren she's just delightful, and I really, really enjoyed talking to her. So I have some announcements for you that are, long overdue, and you've probably seen me talking about some of this stuff. So first and foremost, the podcast never really was affiliated with. There's a loose affiliation with the nonprofit, the Enthusiastic Sobriety Abuse Alliance nonprofit, and we are separate now. So there's no longer any association between the two of us. And the Redbubble account, where people were purchasing T-shirts and stickers and phone cases and things like that had the Believe Survivors logo. That was actually my Redbubble account, and I created the logo. So what I did is I just kind of repurposed it for the podcast, because we are going to start a fund here where any donations that come in will go towards a survivors fund that will be for really for whatever. But, what I'm envisioning is, people that just, find this information and suddenly realize they need more therapy, which happens a lot, and can't afford it. We can help them out, just things like that. So that's where those donations will go to. They will also go towards just helping with expenses for the podcast, because I do provide this podcast for free, and there are expenses that come along with it. Nothing major, but it would just be nice. And there are some new designs on the Redbubble shop, so go check it out. It's in the Linktree that is on the Instagram and the Twitter account. You also have probably noticed that I've been talking about MLMs and other coercive and high control groups. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, because since all this started, a little over a year ago, I've been learning so much, interviewing people and just getting to know people in the survivor community. And I started really thinking about how I was raised in Amway, which is a multi-level marketing corporation. And like literally my parents joined before I was born. So that's all I knew. And then, I joined the group when I was 19. And one of the things I have realized over the past little while is that, the way that they control the brainwashing, the indoctrination, the victim shaming, the pseudoscience, toxic positivity, it's all the same. So between enthusiastic sobriety programs and multi-level marketing companies, it's all the same stuff. It's all the same kind of control. And it just kind of hit me that, of course I joined, of course I joined a cult, and also a lot of the staff participate in MLMs, partially because they don't get paid enough to survive. So they have to have some kind of, side hustle or whatever. And a lot of people, when they leave the group or leave staff, will also join an MLM, which I did too. I joined Mary Kay when I left, but you'll hear more about that later. So that's why I have started kind of branching out, because I do think it's important to talk about the connection between the two and talk about just the coercive control and the, kind of how both enthusiastic sobriety programs and MLMs take advantage of people when they are, most of the time at their lowest. So that's why that's happening. And so I will be interviewing some anti-MLM advocates as well as some survivors from multi-level marketing programs and probably survivors from other programs as well, because we really want to get the word out about, the mental health industry in general, and especially for young people, for adolescents and young adults, because it's monstrous, and it's just, there needs to be light shed on the entire industry. And, that's something that's very close to my heart. I've just, because of what I've been through, what I've seen other people have gone through, a lot of survivors of enthusiastic sobriety programs have been in other programs and, suffered some of the same abuse. So I do feel that I have a responsibility to address all of that, along with, addressing enthusiastic sobriety programs specifically. So I will still be doing that. I will still be interviewing enthusiastic sobriety survivors. That will still be my first priority. But I am going to take a little bit of a wider scope and get into some other things on the podcast. And I think you'll like it. So that's why you've seen that. And I will have an episode next Friday with an anti-MLM advocate. Her name is That Anti-MLM Girl on Instagram. And I believe she's on Twitter, but you should go check her out. Even if it's, even if you don't even know what an MLM is and you don't care, check her out, because she's awesome. She's just a really cool person. And her social media is just badass. So her episode will be up next Friday. I have been also teasing a new platform, which I'm really excited about. So the next Enthusiastic Sobriety Survivor interview is going to be December 4th, and it will be live on Twitch, which I'm super excited about. This could be the best idea I've ever had, or it could be the worst idea I've ever had. We will see. I just thought it would be cool. I love Twitch. I love the platform. I thought it would be really cool to interview people live, and y'all could come on and join the interview, and you could ask questions, and we can do giveaways, and there's just so much you can do with a Twitch channel. And I just thought it would be a cool thing to try. So December 4th, check it out. On the Emmis is already on Twitch. There's a channel. It's not very pretty right now. I have some work I need to do on it, but it will be by the time we start, by the time we have the first episode. And I'm really excited for y'all to meet this person. If there's anybody who would be appropriate to be live streaming an interview, it's this guy. He is just entertaining as hell. So that's really exciting. We're also going to start a Discord server for enthusiastic sobriety survivors, where everybody can hang out and talk. And there will be, specific channels within the server where you can have, specific conversations about things. So I'm really excited about that too. And that will probably launch around the time that the Twitch channel does. The last thing I wanted to throw out there is, because we're on hiatus, I'm sure we've lost some people. So if y'all like the podcast and you want to help me kind of get the word out there, please go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review. And when you see my social media posts pop up on your Twitter or your Instagram, please share them if you're comfortable, just so that we can, start to get the word out there to other survivors who may not have found us, and families who might be thinking about finding treatment for their kids so that they don't put them in an enthusiastic sobriety program. And as always, if you want to be on the podcast, or you want your story featured on the Enthusiastic Sobriety Survivors Twitter account, that's going to be a place just for enthusiastic sobriety survivors, where you'll have direct access to me and to the podcast. And we're only going to talk about, survivor stories there. So you can email me at ontheemmispod@gmail.com, or you can direct message me on Instagram or Twitter, any of the ways. And obviously, I haven't mentioned Facebook. We're no longer on Facebook. I personally am no longer on Facebook. I just couldn't do it anymore. So you'll find us on Twitter and Instagram, and then, of course, on Twitch. So that's enough of me. Let's get to the podcast. And I'm going to give you a trigger warning. We do talk about suicide and sex, sexuality, and gender identity. So, if any of that is triggering for you, just be aware. And I really, really hope you enjoy the podcast. And we'll see you on the other side. Bye. So we're here with Lauren. Hi, Lauren.
Hello. I'm happy to be here.
This has been a long time in the making.
Truly.
Lots of emails have been passed back and forth. I think me and Liz asked you like 72 times what were good times for you to meet, because oh, we're so fried. We're so fried.
Yeah. It's fine. Listen, I woke up this morning, went to the gym with my boyfriend. We were listening to the band Churches, and he goes, "Man, I love Churches." Immediately thought he was talking about Church's Chicken. And I was like, he looked at me, he was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And I'm like, I don't know.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
Lauren and I actually figured out that we have met before.
Yep.
Because after I quit, when I was still trying to be like, hey, I'm the cool ex-staff member that's not resentful and still loves the program, I went to Augusta and stayed with Steve and Heather when they were there, and I went to a function. So Lauren and I met at that function, right? I know. It's so cool.
Small world.
Small fucking world.
Well, it is insight / everything else that it is.
True.
Yeah, it was like God, I remember, because I think I had graduated by that time, and I was like guest judging because they needed extra judges.
Yeah, it was like a talent show or something.
No, it was a cooking function, because I remember one of the teams.
Oh, you had to taste something. Yeah.
I remember one of the teams made a sugar cookie that they had iced, and it said 13th step on it. That is the only thing I remember, other than the other graduate that was guest judging. She and I had created these like alter egos of like influencer Kardashian celebrities, and we're pretending to be all snooty and shitty to the kids.
Yep.
Oh God, great times. We love it.
Great times.
But that was also pre, oh no, I'm in a cult.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted people to love me. That's all.
Yeah. Just, since I stopped being a program sympathizer, I had a couple of experiences like that. Like one that was really hurtful at an AA convention in Atlanta. This woman who I had lived with, worked with, we were like best fucking friends. She was there and she looked at me like she didn't even know who I was. Like she looked through me. Ugh. And I was so fucking hurt. And that's when I started to get like, oh, I'm not special. They're doing the same thing to me that they do to everybody else. And that I did to people.
Yep.
Like I really thought I was going to be the special one that they thought was cool forever.
Yeah, that's the goofiest shit, man. Because I remember this guy who was like a real like integral part of me, like getting sober in the beginning. He graduated, transitioned into AA, and then started drinking, and then started getting to heavier stuff. But the second that he started drinking, the vast majority of us had cut him off, like we had been taught to do.
Yeah.
And then I think like 3 days after my wedding, he committed suicide because he was facing jail time for selling pills. And of course, like, I know I miss him so much. And like, after it got like put out there that I was getting divorced, and everybody ran to go help my ex-husband and console him and coddle him while they were like poking and prodding at me and just kind of shunning me and ignoring me. I stayed sober after that for, a long time, until, several years of therapy, when I realized that like, maybe I'm not an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. But it was when they like excommunicated me that I realized what I had done to Jordan and how alone he must have felt when, he was going through a hard time. He was having some legal troubles, whatever. And that's why he ended up killing himself. And I was like, well, fuck, like this is exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
And it's what I did to you. And I remember the year that I realized that, I had like a real long, hard journaling. And it was essentially like a letter to him of like, I'm so sorry. I wish that I hadn't done that. I love you. And I still love you, and blah, blah. Listen, how do we get this emotional already? God. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I joined the group in March of 2008, a week after I turned 17, and graduated in September of 2012 at the age of 21. Listen,
Yeah.
I graduated summa cum laude from the group. Thank you very much. I was an honor student. I was a gold star group kid.
Gold star.
God, I remember one time Steve, who was my head counselor, after I had graduated and after I had like gone to law school, it must have been like a gratitude meeting or something, or maybe Steve and I were just on a phone call. And he was like, Lauren, I talk about you all the time with these parents that come in with their kids and they're so concerned. And I make sure that they know that like we have people like you who go to college and go to law school and make something of yourself and stay sober and, don't actually kill yourself and it's all because of the group. It's all because of the group.
You're the one person who did that. So I have to talk about you all the time.
Yeah, there was another one. One of my closest friends who I met in the group, she was also touted under that like gold star kid until she got divorced too. So.
Oh yeah. Because we don't do divorce.
No, we don't. Women and autonomy just don't mix.
No. I mean, they literally used to say, Bob literally used to say, we don't do divorce.
That's what my
mother
says.
We don't get divorced. Even though there are plenty of people who were on staff who got divorced, but somehow it was always explained away like, well, there's good spiritual reasons for their divorce. And it was usually the woman's fault 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, it was the 3 Fs, the fucking, fighting, and fixing. Those were the only reasons that you were allowed to get a divorce. I remember Heather, who is my outpatient counselor, telling me that when I got into my first relationship, she was like, these are the 3 big things. And it's the same thing as when you come in the group. The only 3 rules you have.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I had no idea. No idea.
Fuck my mental health. That has nothing.
No, mental illness doesn't exist. So
no, you're right. It's a spiritual malady.
Right.
I need to be closer with God. When I was all through outpatient, and for quite a long time afterwards, because I was also one of those people that like pined for the steering committee position because I wanted to be like the gold star kid. But I never got it because I was always gaming.
Wait, you were never on steering committee?
No, I was after I stopped gaming.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, Liz.
Nope. I quit gaming because I kept getting in trouble for, God forbid, being a 17-year-old and flirting with boys. How dare I? Did I actually ever quit gaming? Yeah, because here's the thing. I don't know how not to flirt. Like, I flirt with my best friends. I flirt with my boyfriend. Like, I flirt with servers. I flirt with literally everyone. Right. I don't know how not. I also think that's my personality and a lot of the mirroring that I do to adapt to like my ADHD. It's just mirroring, which comes off as like bubbly and like, oh my God, I love you, which also fit really well with the group. But yeah, quit gaming and all of a sudden I was ready for a group approved boyfriend.
Yeah.
I was actually in 2 relationships in the group. One, God, I didn't like either of them really. I know that's awful.
No, that's not awful.
Yeah. And I remember, so my first group boyfriend, I think it was like we were together for 3 months and I broke up with him. And apparently I have no recollection of this, but I was told when I got divorced that I said this. When I broke up with my first group boyfriend, I said, I feel like it's just, I'm doing this because it's what everybody wants me to do. And so I broke up with him. They just wanted me to be with him, not break up with him. Like, and I was aware of tacitly aware of the fact that I don't actually like this dude. It's just what people want me to do.
That's like, I can't tell you how many people didn't like the people they were in relationships with, including me.
And then when I got divorced, I said the same thing. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I don't actually want to be with you. I just feel like it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And one of the few interactions we had during the divorce process, he was like, I just talked to my best friend who was actually the cousin of my first group boyfriend who was also in the group. And he was like, yeah, that's bullshit. Like she told, Sizzle the same thing because even though I was dating this man, I still called him by his nickname. Why do you do that?
Right.
So yeah, that was the thing is I never really liked any of them because I didn't like I don't like the type of dudes that the group churns out. They're not like grimy enough for me.
I'm still so blown away by that. I never heard that and I never said that. I don't understand. Can you help me understand how that even, like, what kind of a conversation were you having when someone said women can't give consent? And is there any like context to it? Is there anything to back, like, why do they say that to people?
For me, it was less of like an explicit, this is, what I'm telling you exists, but it was more of, I remember, I'm pretty sure I was talking with Heather about it, but in no uncertain terms, she basically told me that like sex is a service.
Oh, gotcha.
And even if I don't want to do it, I got to do it.
Yeah. Or at least give them a blowjob. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Except my employers never told me that I needed to just at least give my boyfriend a blowjob. I would.
Right.
Right. When I came into the group, I was actually a virgin, which I was told was a very rare thing. And so I felt very special. And so they had this infinite opportunity to mold me into like the sexual woman that I should be. Right. Which was, looking back on it now, is a very, very weird thing. Because I was fucking 17 and I knew everything I knew from sex, I knew from porn, which I was told was inherently wrong and bad and immoral and I should never watch it and blah, blah, blah. And of course I know that there are porn addictions and, lines and, lines in the sand and whatever. But to each their own. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. If you have an addiction problem, whatever. Anyway. But I remember one time talking with a girl in the group who was several years younger than me. And we were talking about female orgasms. And I spoke to Heather about it. And she basically she told me that this girl that told me all this information about female orgasms was lying because you don't get to experience them until you're older.
Wow. Sorry, Heather. I'm sorry that you didn't have orgasms until you were older. Oh my God. And here, let me just tell you where that probably came from. Let's start with the staff perspective. Where that probably came from, let's remember, anything that came out of Bob's mouth was absolutely joy. Yeah, it was Joy's hand up his ass. So where I'm sure that came from is someone somewhere was not getting off having sex with her boyfriend, and no one wanted to blame it on the man. No one wanted to say like, well, it's because there's no foreplay and because your boyfriend doesn't give a shit about your pleasure. So instead of getting into that, it was, well, women don't have orgasms till they're older. I guarantee you it was something along those lines. Or it came from some weird woo-woo Louise Hay bullshit. So yeah, that's my take on where that absolute nonsense came from. And let me just say, you can have an orgasm before you're 50. It does happen if you have a man who is interested in your pleasure as much as he is in his pleasure, and who understands it takes women a little bit longer to get to that point and is willing to wait. Have you guys not heard the devil's fan thing?
The devil's fan.
Okay, there are going to be a bunch of guys listening to this who know exactly what I'm talking about and are probably losing their shit right now. It's just ridiculous. So it's like this day in outpatient, right? Where I guess they like separate the guys and the girls. Shocking. They don't normally do that when they talk about sexual stuff, but they have this talk with the guys about, and it's called Devil's Fan Group or Topic or whatever. And they say that, God, let me try to remember. I remember the punchline, but I'm trying to remember how you get there. Like, you end up in hell and you walk into the devil's office and he's got all these... Oh, no. I know what it is. He's got all these clocks that are in his office, right? And you're like, what are all these clocks? And the devil's like, those are all the men all over the world who are masturbating right now. Right. And then the devil has a fan behind him, and you say, well, what does the fan mean? And he says, oh, that's your clock.
Such a
I'm probably not telling it right. All I remember is the punchline was like, you masturbate so much that the devil uses your gauge of masturbation as a fan. If there are any guys out there who want to correct me and tell the correct story, please feel free to do so in an email or on our Instagram. I don't care which one. I'd love to hear it. But yeah, that was like guys, guys were, and it was meant to make guys feel okay about masturbation. Like men are supposed to masturbate.
Yeah, because you're keeping the devil cool in hell.
And can I just make a quick public service announcement? Don't ever Google devil's fan masturbation. I did.
Did you at least open an incognito browser?
No. I always forget like just how incredibly disgusting the internet can be, because I'm Googling it for like, is there a story about this? Like, did this come from somewhere? Not realizing what Google is going to do with those search terms. And wow.
I recall in my assessment, right before I was going into outpatient, Heather asked me, my history with sexual partners and whether I'd ever like had sexual encounters with people to like get drugs or alcohol, which I never did, again, because I was a virgin when I came in. But it wasn't until later when I had a group boyfriend and we were having the discussion, I was making sure that it was okay with staff that I was, wanting to have sex with this man, because you have to have approval before you can have sex for the first time with anyone, apparently.
Yes, for sure.
And that's when I got the discussion that certain sexual positions were not considered loving.
So anything other than missionary, is that pretty much? Yeah.
I definitely participated in things other than that with my group boyfriend, but there were certain things that I wouldn't do because I was taught to be disgusted by my own body and my own sexuality. So
right.
There were things that I would not, even though he was eager to do them, I would just not allow it because I was like, that's gross. I'm disgusted by my own body.
Right.
I distinctly remember I had this conversation with my sponsor who at the time was on staff, and I was like, no, I really just would like to have, I would like to lose my virginity in my own bed. I love my bed. It's very special to me.
Right.
And she was
it's safe and comfortable.
Are you sure that's not just you trying to be controlling, blah, blah, blah. And so
my God.
We went to a fucking Holiday Inn Express, which granted is not a roach motel. And it's like, a decently higher end with a continental breakfast, which when you're I was 20, 21 years old. I was like, oh my God, this is so fancy.
Well, first of all, it's not like we actually looked at our clients as anything less than an extension of ourselves, and B, like any of us had any idea what a fucking client counselor relationship was supposed to look like. But yeah, I mean, I think I heard that in the group, but it was a first class thing. It was like, if you're really going to treat someone right and you want your relationship to be based on, your self-worth, and, you want to feel good about yourself, and, men are supposed to first class women somewhere. And I'm sure, again, it's 1 person, one sponsor, one staff member told one kid in the group, like, hey, take her to a hotel room. Like, it was just like like a one-off. Like, someone said, take her to a hotel room and, it'll be really fancy, because maybe the girl had roommates. You know what I mean? Like, there may have been for the group, there may have been a good reason for it. There's never a good reason for a counselor to get into where someone has sex with one of their clients. We know that. But as far as the low bar of the program, it was probably something like that, something along those lines. Like, there was a reason someone said, like, hey, take her to a hotel. And then somehow that became what everybody did. You know what I mean? Like the same thing with you had to ask a girl on a first date with a rose. Like, I know that became a thing in Augusta. And it's because it's because one person did it and then it just became what you did, because that's what happens in cults with, groupthink. Like, it makes total sense. But yeah, I mean, I can tell you there was never really much, because you have to remember, like, especially on staff, you're just doing what someone told you to do when you were in the group. And ultimately, it probably all started with Bob and Joy, and then it's just been passed down throughout the decades, and probably somewhere gotten like twisted and someone added their own weird, creepy spin to it. So, who knows where it started? It was never like someone sat me down and was like, if someone says that, they want to have sex, you need to make sure it's in a hotel. Like, it was just what we did, because, very few people, especially when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, you don't have these like deep conversations about like, are we ready for sex? Like, a lot of people just, it's like, are you good? I'm good. Yeah, let's do it, but yeah, like, to escape having to have these conversations. And I think that comes a lot from the male staff who tell the guys, like, surprise her. But yeah, I think that's probably where that comes from. Like, and it's and just absolute disregard for the woman and her needs and her wants and consent and any of that, because like you said, like, sex is a service. So of course she wants to do it with you. Like, so surprise her at a hotel because that's normal and healthy.
Feels very Pretty Woman-esque, but like in a bad way. That reminds me of, I remember when I wanted to start taking birth control, and I had a conversation with someone on staff about it. And she told me that birth control was a mind-changing chemical. And like, like, if you're going to take birth control, there should be like a medically necessary reason. And I remember asking her, I was like, well, what's a medically necessary reason? And she couldn't give me one. And I'm like, not wanting to get pregnant is a medical necessary reason.
Right. It's the point of birth control. If you're going to get into like, don't be on birth control, you need to tell the person what they can do to prevent pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases.
Yeah. God, I want to say I was either 18 or 19 when we went on our first date. And I remember feeling, again, like, so special, like, oh my God, you want to date me? Like, that must mean that I'm a good, healthy person in the group and is worthy of a group approved boyfriend, which I didn't think group approved at the time, but like, I'm worthy of a boyfriend and it's going to be as magical as Steve and Heather's relationship or whatever.
We're worthy of a healthy relationship. Yeah.
And healthy under whose standards, but that's,
that's what I was going to say, as if anyone there knows what the fuck a healthy relationship is.
Yeah. Isn't that fucking insane?
Yeah. And the word they use is ready, but we all know what that really means.
Yeah. And I remember, okay, so it's even like, I remember feeling so frustrated before he even asked me on a date about like, why am I not ready for a boyfriend? And I remember going to Heather and we did like a very detailed, like, step 4 and 5.
Oh God.
About sex. And again, keep in mind, little baby virgin Lauren has never had sex, but I had done other things. And, we literally went through like me as a child, like understanding my sexuality through, how porn is evil and masturbation habits and blah, 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 blah. And it was as if magic had happened, right? And I feel like there must have been like some man behind the curtain Wizard of Oz shit, because I feel like within a couple of months of reading my inventory with Heather that I got asked out on a date by this man. And it was, we had the rose and we went on the date, and then we went on a second date and a third date. And then he asked me to be his girlfriend, because that's, again, how structured everything is. And
you share feelings.
Yeah. Which you're allowed to share feelings now.
Right.
Only after
right.
you've done it in an approved manner.
Well, and let me just throw this out there. I don't know if this happened to you, Lauren, but they'll do stuff like that where it's like, we're going to do this inventory with you so you can figure out what's in the way of you having a healthy relationship. But then behind the scenes, the male staff or their sponsor or whoever is like, and the guys don't have to do inventories. Like they don't have to do that shit. But there's so much like of the staff moving the pieces behind the scenes. And then when you get asked on the date, it's like, see, you were honest and you gave everything up to God and you invited this into your life. And it's like, totally. Like, that's not what happened.
Exactly. And like up until the moment that I said it, whatever, 30 seconds ago, I'd completely forgotten about the fact that I did that sex specific inventory with Heather. And all of a sudden it came rushing to me. I'm like, oh, it wasn't like coincidence at that point. Like I just realized that now. Like I was today years old when I realized that it was not God. It was Steve and Heather.
Right. Exactly.
But, I mean, after like we were in a relationship, it was, it was fine. We had the Wednesday date night and the Sunday date night, so they wouldn't interfere with Monday or Thursday night meetings or functions. And that's what we did. Like that was the only time like we really had to ourselves. And it was that way, up until we graduated, and we were constantly touted as being the healthy couple, right? Because there were other kids in the group that were in relationships, but they spent way too much time together, and they were, probably having sex too much, or probably having sex in ways that weren't loving or appropriate, or, whatever. And they were toxic and they were bad. And they, something bad always ended up happening to those kids that were in those toxic relationships. And then, like I think I said earlier, it was almost every single ounce of a new sexual encounter was disclosed prior to, engaging in said sexual encounter, which, looking back on it, I cannot imagine as an adult human being having to ask permission to have sex with my boyfriend.
Right.
With anybody other than him.
Right.
Just the process of approvals, it feels like that of like a bureaucratic business of having to like, hey, I think that I'm ready to do this. What do you think? Like, do you think I'm emotionally and mentally prepared to have sex for the first time? Like, who the fuck can tell you that?
Right. And who is? Nobody is.
I can't. I'm not even.
And, I remember, first of all, I just realized how lucky I am that I was only in that one relationship when I was 23. You want to know what a loving position is. It's any of them, like any of them. First of all, any of them in my marriage are loving because I love my fucking husband and he loves me. However, you don't have to love somebody to have sex with them. Like,
what?
I know, right? Like, you don't have to be. Yeah, like sexual positions don't have to be loving. They can just be a party. Like,
wow, this is news to me.
I know.
I can't wait to go explore some of this now. God. It makes me so mad because obviously all humans are like inherently, I won't say all humans, most humans are inherently sexual creatures, right? Like at like a base. at a biological level in like terms of, keeping the species going or whatever. But like, I am a sexual person. I enjoy having sex if if it's with somebody that I want to have sex with, or like I enjoy sexual encounters. I think they're fun. And to have that so dampened and to have my views on my own sexuality, whether it's how often I engage in sex, the gender of the person that I choose to have sex with, whatever, having that so just shoved down and just being told like, sex is a service. You'll figure out orgasms later on down the road. Don't worry about it now. We're not going to, we'll control every other portion of, your sex life, but we're not going to give you some tips and tricks on how to actually have fun with it. We're going to make it as miserable for you as possible. Yeah.
And if women want to have sex and want to have sex a lot, that's a whole other problem.
Yeah, they're a slut and they're not healthy. And
you're trying to fill a void. What are you missing? God-shaped hole, all that weird shit.
Yeah. That's when really, women who orgasm just have too much power. That's the problem.
Oh, yeah. That's a good fucking point. Yeah.
Because at that point, like we understand the autonomy of our own bodies, and why would we want women within this specific group of people to have power when it's kind of consistently been a thing of women don't have power.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought up the gender thing too, because that's very like, if you're attracted to women, if you anything like that, like you're a lesbian and lesbians are bad. Or because I'm attracted to women all the time.
Yep.
We have been watching Money Heist, and can we just talk about one of the characters? Her name is Tokyo. She has the cutest butt I've ever seen in my life. And she wears thongs. And so anytime she's on screen in a thong, I'm like, oh my God, I love her butt so much. And my husband's like, okay, honey. But like, that doesn't make me anything. It makes me a person who likes cute butts, like on men and women. Like, it's not weird. But I could never, like, I remember we were watching some movie, and it had David Duchovny in it, and we were all like obsessed with David Duchovny at the time, late 80s, 90s, hello. And I remember he was naked, and I was like, oh my God, look at his butt. Like, because it was a great butt and he was naked. And it was like, I was so shamed. Yeah. And it was like, and I remember being like, why is that so bad? Like, I'm a 23-year-old woman who thinks a guy on a TV show who has a nice butt has a nice butt. It's not weird, but it was those kinds of things did shape me a lot, because it was like, it's that puritanical, like, okay, so I'm only allowed to like my boyfriend's butt. Like, that's just not realistic. It's just not,
Well, it's just that the men are allowed to sexualize the women in the program, but the women can't sexualize any man other than actually probably not even the person that they're with.
Right.
Because that would make them a slut.
Yes. Exactly.
Or not right with God or whatever. It's just because I have a similar experience. And this was after I was graduated and I was in AA. And my sponsor was another woman who was in the group. And I was reading this book where a teenage girl was like struggling with her sexuality and was like, I'm going to, sleep with women and see how that feels. And I'm reading this book and I'm like, wait a minute. This sounds weirdly familiar. Like, why does this girl's, opinions and experiences resonate with me? And I remember talking to my counselor, or not my counselor, my sponsor about it. And I was like, Heather, what if I'm like sexually attracted to women? And she said, well, Lauren, maybe you should just put the book down and like stop reading it. Like, if it's making you question your sexuality, just stop reading it.
Yes, heaven forbid.
I did. And I never expressed, how I thought, a woman with a good butt has a good butt, or like, wow, that woman is beautiful. I would like absolutely date her.
Right.
until probably within the last year, right? And I'm like, oh shit, am I bisexual?
Right.
Because it was something that was so shoved down because you can only be interested in men if you're a woman. And if you're a man, you can only be interested in women.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's okay to want attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's okay if like everything you do is about getting attention. Go on with your bad self. Who gives a shit? Why do we have to tell people how they should live their lives or if they should, what level of attention seeking they should have? Like it's fine. Whatever. Who cares?
Well, and it's even so much of like there were a lot of behaviors that the boys in the group did that if you look at it, they're literally just being goofy and crazy and silly to get attention. Exactly. God, all the dry humping. But like,
well, and that's because they weren't healthy enough for a relationship, so they had to, hump somebody.
God, but it was always the women that were attention seeking and never the dudes who were actively doing things to seek attention.
Right.
But it was
right.
a much more negative connotation when like I wore a knee brace because I have legitimate arthritis, even at 17, and they were like, "You're just attention seeking."
Yeah.
Fuck off.
So ridiculous.
No, I got granny knees. Like, let me wear a brace to make them better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's gross. Men.
Yeah. Yes. Men. TM.
Yeah. Kyle and I, even after we got married, were still like pretty involved in helping out with functions when people wanted them. Or like when it was needed. We actually helped out with the Atlanta haunted house for years after we graduated. And again, a lot of that was because Kyle's really good at attention seeking behavior without it being, negatively viewed. But, it was fun. And I was still on the good side and I was still being told like, good job, Lauren. Like, you're a good girl. Like, we're so proud of you and blah, blah, blah. And I just remember feeling that it was okay and it was safe and I was good as long as I followed these rules and didn't think for myself. And then, I went to college and I graduated college and I was like, I'm going to go make one of the biggest mistakes of my life and go be a lawyer. And I went to law school and I moved to a completely different town that had no Insight affiliations at all. And so, oh shit, now all of a sudden I have to be friends with normies. Like, oh no.
Yeah.
And to compound that, my ex-husband couldn't come with me because he couldn't find work in Macon. So now I am a woman living on my own in a brand new city where I have no like safe people, right? And lo and behold, I started to think for myself. My sponsor, I know, right? God. My sponsor was no longer affiliated with Insight in any way, shape, or form. And I didn't have, that constant contact from anybody associated with enthusiastic sobriety programs. And it was just me learning to think for myself and, God, having to like make friendships with people, whether they be normies or like people in AA, which is the hardest fucking thing I've ever had to do.
Making friends as an adult is so hard.
Well, yeah. And like, fortunately, I had, the institution friendships of the people that I met in the program in AA in Macon and the people that I met in school. But I did not know how to interact with people at school or shit. And even AA for that matter, because none of them even knew about the group. So that was just a whole different ballgame. But again, started to think for myself, partially because my ex-husband didn't live with me. And the poor thing, he would, we would call each other every night and I would always call him on my way home from a meeting. God, this is so funny. And also like I still have a lot of guilt about, not a lot of guilt, but some guilt like bubbles up when I tell this story. Every time I would call, he would tell me that he missed me and I did not miss him. And I refused to say it back.
Yeah.
And I remember one time he was like, well, why do you do this? And I'm like, well, because I don't. I said, I'm just so busy all the time that I don't have time to like think of you.
Right.
And, whatever. But the thing I forgot to mention that is integral in this timeline is 30 days after our wedding, he told me that he didn't think he was an alcoholic and that he might want to start drinking. And I was completely like taken aback, right? Because again, gold star, summa cum laude graduate of, the Inside program in Augusta. And that was one of the 3 F's, right? Like that was the fixing. He was going to go relapse. And I had a complete meltdown over that. And eventually it was, we came to the decision that because I was not okay with him drinking, that he would not drink.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because I was like, I can't stay with a man who drinks. Like the foundation of our relationship was in sobriety, and that's it. Which, gross.
Well, and talk about pressure. I remember Bob talking about, again, Bob, which was probably Joy, talking about how like if you're deciding to marry someone, one of the things you have to really like pray about and like try to figure out is this person going to work a program for the rest of their life?
That's so fucked up.
And it's like, probably not. And I just remember being like, oh God, like that's
fucking heavy.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. It was honestly one of the most devastating things that I, experienced in my short life at that time. And so that was kind of floating in the background all the time. Cause here I am in Macon. I have service positions. I'm, again, doing the gold star stuff that I was taught to do, except now I'm starting to like think for myself.
Right.
And, be surrounded by people who were different than what I was used to because I finally moved out of my hometown. And then I graduated and moved back to my, a suburban area around 20 minutes from where I grew up for my entire life. And I moved back in with my husband, which I should have been ecstatic for, but I was not. And slowly but surely, like my mental health just started to go down the drain. And when I moved back, obviously got a sponsor in Augusta who was not affiliated with the program. Thank fucking God. And because at that point I had weaned myself off of the need of the approval of the group again, because I started to think for my fucking self. But yeah, mental health started to decline, and I started to realize that a lot of the foundation of my depression and anxiety was rooted in the fact that I had married a man that I did not want to be married to. And it was really, really bad. Like I felt really, really, really bad. And God, the whole thing was dramatic and drawn out. And fortunately, because of, the profession that I had entered at the time, I could, do everything myself. So it didn't need a lawyer. We didn't have stuff, thank God. And because of people that I knew, the actual legal process was one and done. And it was in and out, and it was perfect, but it was terribly emotional, and he had a very, very bad time with it. And meanwhile, I didn't have like a terrible time with it, but it still was an emotional roller coaster for me, right? Because I don't think I'm not going to say I don't think anybody, because there are definitely sociopaths out there that are like, hell yeah, I'm going to go hurt everyone's feelings for fun. But it was, I never wanted to hurt anybody as bad as I hurt him. And it felt really fucking bad. And I don't have guilt for that anymore, because he and I are like, we have a pretty, normal relationship now. We can talk. We're not like in each other's lives, but God, he like will go to dinner with my parents sometimes, and my parents still get him like birthday gifts and Christmas gifts and shit like that. And my dad had a triple bypass a couple years ago, and while he was recovering, my ex-husband came over and like helped take care of the lawn, kind of shit. Like, good dude. My family, awesome. My family still genuinely loves him, and that's fine. But like, it was when it got out that that I was leaving him, our old roommate was getting married, and all of, the Augusta counselors came to her wedding. And immediately, this was a month after, right? I moved out of our apartment.
Wait, who's your old roommate?
Blake?
Oh, yeah, I know Blake.
Yeah. All of the Augusta counselors were at her wedding, and they all flocked to him because poor him.
Right.
Right. I'm the harlot who decided to leave. Like,
yeah.
And I remember feeling, what's the word I'm looking for? So betrayed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like, instead of like, Lauren, like, what's going on? Like, do you want to talk about it? Like, how are you feeling? It was one of my old counselors and old sponsors came up to me, and I immediately started poking and prodding into the fact that I had a hickey on my chest. And I had to look her dead in her eyes and say, this is not the time or the place to talk about this.
And it's none of your business.
And again, it's none of your business because, the person that I had met for a very short period of time after I left my ex-husband, that was the first time in my entire life, 28, age doesn't make sense to me. However old I was.
Late 20s.
Yeah, late 20s. Enjoyed sex for the first time.
Right.
Like, and
Heaven forbid.
I remember being so blown away the first time this man and I had sex. I was like, holy shit.
What? This is awesome.
Exactly. It was just an unfettered experience. And, that was emotional in and of itself, that whole thing. But like afterwards, I had my first go at sport fucking for a little while, which was, that's way, I didn't relapse at that point. Like, right. It didn't happen. I was doing this thing, and I was still on service committees and AA up in Atlanta. Cause also after my divorce, I moved to Atlanta because Augusta's very teeny tiny, and you see everybody that you've ever known for your entire life.
And like somebody in an AA meeting babysat you at some point. Yeah.
God. Yeah. I just, God. And at that point, again, after old roommate's wedding, that's when I realized how fucked up everything was. That's not even when I realized how fucked up everything was, because there were little like bits and bobs throughout that, but it never really affected me. Right. So like ran into somebody who was in the Insight program in Atlanta at a young people's convention. And she mentioned in passing that, she was going to check out counseling, go to counselor training or whatever, and had a conversation with Clint. And allegedly he said, well, we have very specific, things that we believe in. And she looked at me and she said, he basically insinuated that they don't believe in gay people. They don't believe in queer identities.
Wow.
And I was like, huh, okay. But, it was things like that. Or, my best friend who I had known prior to joining the group, and she was one of the reasons I joined the group. After she graduated, she was, doing the best that I had ever seen her do in, the 8 years that I had known her. And the only thing that she was doing wrong is she was having casual sex. And new graduates or almost graduates would come to me and tell me that they were told not to hang out with her because she was a bad influence. I'm like, are you fucking serious? She is sober. She is on service committees. She is literally the happiest that I have ever seen her. And they're going to call her a bad influence because she has taken autonomy over her own body. Like, what the hell?
Right.
Or my queer friend that were like, yeah, we were shoved back in the closet. That's what they told me, that they were shoved back in the closet. I was like, this is kind of fucking weird. Like, what the hell is this place? But again, I had been willfully ignorant and willfully blind to all of that until all of a sudden I was excommunicated and nobody gave a shit about the fact that I was like months away from either committing suicide or being institutionalized for an attempted suicide.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, fuck this place. I'm not gonna fucking do this anymore. Like, your rules are fucking stupid, and you are damaging people, and you are leaving people with lasting trauma over what, and for what reason? You just want to create an army of like mindless and spineless minions.
Right.
And worship some gross prophet who kisses 17-year-old girls on the cheek at somebody's wedding. For me, at least, I came in so emotionally unregulated at 17 years old, because honestly, what 17-year-old is emotionally regulated?
Right.
But like, so emotionally unregulated with parents that were not terribly emotionally present, right? They provided for me physically, right? Food, shelter, water, clothes, whatever. But like, I just wanted somebody to be excited to see me and show me they love me and tell me they love me. And all I wanted was the approval of people.
Yeah.
And I got to this place that was like, we love you unconditionally and we'll always love you unconditionally. Yeah. And the unconditionally should have an asterisk next to it, or, you know, not unlike the spelling errors in the training manual, but like maybe we don't know the definition of unconditional.
Right.
Because even there were a fuck ton of conditions. And the second that I decided that I was like, I'm not going to abide by their rules, I got cast out immediately.
Yeah.
And it bullshit, but
it was a bunch of different little things. Like, this really good friend of mine that I was living with at the time, like, just did me fucking dirty when I was, because I was, sharing, or not sharing, but essentially renting a room in her house. And she was, and before I moved there, she was like, you don't have to pay me rent, we'll just let you get on your feet. And I was like, are you sure? Because your bills are going to go up with me living there. And she was like, no, don't worry about it. And then literally 4 days after I moved in with her, she took me on a drive and told me I had to start paying rent. And it was like, cool. So I've moved into your house and I'm broke. And now all of a sudden, so I'm pretty sure that like Joy or Wendy got to her and was like, you have to charge her rent or whatever. And then she, when I mean, from that moment, I was like, I am going to work my ass off so I can get the hell out of here. Like, I just want my own place. I don't want to have to fucking deal with people anymore and their weird rules about rent and, whatever. And when I tried to move out, she was just really shitty about it. And it was just such a bummer because she and I had been so close for so long. And it was like, so on the, the orders of someone else, you're more concerned with them accepting you than about our friendship. And so that was kind of the beginning. And I was also starting to make friends who did not work for the program, and they were nice to me. And like, they would call me and ask me to hang out. There wasn't any of this like, your relationships are all on you. And if you want to be close to people, you have to, they would call me and be like, hey, you want to go do this tonight? And I would be like, yes, I do. Like I was so happy. And just those kind of things started to like break down all those walls in my brain, I went to a club and I didn't get drunk. And I mean, just a lot of things. And I'm trying to remember. I mean, it was probably for sure when it took me about 5 years too. It was 2014 when I started to go like, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. And I was still friendly with some of them. A lot of people had stopped talking to me. So I was like a little pissed, like seriously, but of course I justified it like, well, I'm kind of doing my own thing. And I don't want, because something you reminded me of when you were talking, Lauren, is they have this concept of like spiritual windows. And like, if you do something that's like bad or whatever, you're opening a spiritual window that like bad things can come in. And so if you're friends with someone and you're opening these spiritual windows, it could affect your friends too, because whatever comes in could affect them. I'm not telling it right, but that's basically, it's like,
very on brand.
Totally on brand. So I kind of, yeah, all that shit. And so I think I justified it like, well, yeah, they don't want to, have to step in my karma or whatever. I don't know. But when I hit the point where I was like, I don't think I'm an alcoholic, and I stopped going to meetings, a lot of people who were ex-staff that I was still friends with, like in AA, and all of us had kind of started to get like we would talk shit about certain things in the program, which was a big deal. Like, like you're not supposed to do that either. Sure. Yeah. And it's disloyal, and that means you're fucked up in some way. If you need to talk shit about something, what's going on with you, whatever. They all stopped talking to me. Like when I stopped going to AA, my phone stopped ringing from the staff, from the people who were ex-staff that were in AA that had been out for a long time. And I was like, God damn, fuck this. That's what started me really being like, not only like, because I had real issues with AA at the time too. And I still do. I know that not all AA is the way that operates in a way that I have a problem with, but there are some fundamental things that I don't like about AA. But not only AA, but like, I really started to think about certain things, like, and other people, there were other people who would say things to me like, the women can't exercise unless Renee is exercising for some reason, and then the women are allowed to exercise. And I remember someone saying that to me, and I was like, oh my God, that's so true. And it was like, oh God, because I was so trained, like, you do not talk shit about Renee. Like, she's like, the pinnacle of whatever. And it felt so like bad to me, like, but it also felt good. It was also like, oh my God, that's fucking true. And so once I started to allow myself to see things like that as like, these are not like, because I was so beaten down with like, for me personally, you have to own everything. You have to take responsibility for everything because you're such a victim and you have such victim mentality. So it was like, if I ever had a negative thought about Renee, it was like, why am I thinking that? Is it because something about her is reminding me of something in me that I don't like? And so therefore I don't like Renee. Like, I was never allowed to just be like, I don't fucking like this person. It was like, I finally started to allow myself to have those thoughts and be like, you know what? I don't like this person, so I'm not going to hang out with them. Like, that was like,
God,
right? Like,
that is
crazy. And so that's really where it started for me. And then, I really started, that was the beginning of the unraveling. And then, once I met my husband, and we just, like, he's just so wonderful, and we just fell in love, and it was just amazing. And I had been so like conditioned to believe that like that was pretty much damn near impossible for me, because I had so much baggage and I was such a bitch, like I was constantly being told like no man would ever want me because I was such a bitch, and especially to men, because in their eyes, being a bitch to men meant like, standing up to them and telling them where they could fucking shove it when they were being assholes. So, right. Yeah. Like, I didn't take shit from the 21-year-old men who were trying to like, control my life as a 30-year-old woman. So, all of that kind of happened. And I found a really good therapist, and she was wonderful, and she helped me unpack a lot of it. And I think that's when I really got angry and was like, fuck them. And didn't even have any kind of like compassion or like forgiveness. And I still don't. I don't forgive them, and I'm never going to, and I don't feel like I have to. Like, that's never going to happen. I have a little bit more compassion for some people, especially, since I've gotten into all of this and really having to look at like like how much I was abused and how much of the abuse that I dished out was because of I thought was normal. Like I didn't really think was abuse. So I'm able to have a little bit of compassion for some people, but like having that kind of compassion. And people will say, like, well, what about the people who've been there for 20 years and they're so indoctrinated? And where I have a hard time with that is like, yeah, but so was I, and I fucking left. You know, like I don't give them, like, I do understand. I'm very understanding of where they are and how difficult it is to be like, I'm leaving, I'm quitting, whatever. Like, I really had to, like, when I think about when I quit, I mean, I did a really good job of being like, it's not because I don't, I have any problems with you guys. It's just because I just think it's time for me to try something else. Because if I had said anything other than that, who knows if they would have talked me back into it. And the amount of like one-on-ones I would have set myself up for if I was really honest about why I wanted to leave, I just didn't want to deal with it. So I just quietly was like, I'm just moving on, but I do have compassion for how hard that is, but I don't have compassion for like, suck it up and get out. If I can do it, you can do it too. And at 12 years in that place, I saw a lot of the problems with it, and you have too, and you are choosing to ignore them at this point.
Yeah, because in your story, I know that you talk about realizing when you were there actively, like indoctrinated in it, some of the stuff that you were dishing out, thinking like, what the fuck is this about?
Right.
And I can't imagine that, no one on staff currently, or no one on staff who's been there for 10 years. Somebody that I was really close to in the group is on staff in Charlotte, and she has to, like, I know that she has to know those things, and that she has to see that some of the stuff that she's doing is like, that's a little fucking weird. Like, it's spiritual. Like,
yeah. And I still thought that way after I left. I still thought I was walking this narrow road of, spiritual fucking, I don't know how to even say it, like betterness or whatever. But, and that took me some time too, like separating myself from the staff and the program, and just 12-step recovery in general took a lot of unpacking. And then some of that like spiritual woo-woo Louise Hay shit, honestly, I didn't really start to kind of look at and go like, this is weird, until like 5 years ago.
It's amazing what happens when you start hanging out with educated people and educated women specifically.
Right.
Because that's what happened to me in Macon. And like, I all of a sudden I'm like, shit, a lot of the stuff that I believe is bullshit. And like, who told me to believe that? I don't want to believe that anymore.
And I don't know if I talked about this, but like, I feel like I've talked about this on a podcast, but I remember watching TV. I mean, this is probably somewhere between 2011 and 2013. And there was this woman who, because I still believed well into, me having left there, that, if you got drunk and went out and got raped, like you had a part to play in it or whatever. Like I still very much believe that. And I was watching something, and this woman, who had been raped, was speaking at like an event, like a protest, or like keep your laws off my body kind of event. And she was going off about like, no one has the right to touch me or put their hands on my body. And she stripped naked on the like stage she was on. And she was like, I can walk down the street completely naked and you still have no fucking right to touch me. And I was like, oh my God, she's right. Like, it was the first time that I was like, no shit. Like no one has, like, even if I am like falling down drunk, if your inclination is to have sex with me, you are the problem. like, like if your first inclination isn't like help her get home, that's not me. That's the problem. That's you. That's the problem. Like, yeah, yeah, right. Yeah. Oh yeah. With so many things, with so many things. Um, but yeah, anyway, we went off on a total tangent there. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of my, how it happened for me. It was a very slow process, and there are still things now, that we'll talk about on the podcast. And afterwards I'll be like, oh yeah, like, like that does make sense. And I think there'll be things like that, my whole life. But,
And that's, and it was all done at the right time, right? At the right age, because the vast majority of us were being taught these things way before our frontal lobe was fully developed and we could understand like the true consequences of actions and like
yeah.
have some sort of like, forethought before we do or agree with things.
They're just so much more damaging when it comes to teenagers and young adults. Tell us where you are now.
Yeah. So when I moved up to Atlanta, I started seeing a therapist because I was still having pretty bad panic attacks and they were happening more frequently. And so I met this wonderful angel of a woman. And she and I did a lot of EMDR, and I'm going to try to remember what the acronym stands for. Eye desensitization response. No, fuck it. I just Google it.
Isn't it eye movement?
Yeah, you're right. Eye movement desensitization, reprocessing or something like that.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of that. And, within the year prior to me seeing my therapist, two of my best friends, one of whom I met before Insight and one of whom I met in Insight, both came to me and were like, hey, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to start drinking. And, these were the two women that I've been closest to, my entire life, essentially. And so that started weighing really heavily on me. And I chatted with my therapist about it. I was talking to my sponsor up in Atlanta about it. And, my therapist and I, I'll say this, with the help of my therapist and my sponsor, I came to the conclusion that I am not an alcoholic. And I have been drinking with impunity, as the book talks about. And, I have been in a long-term relationship with a man that I had no intention of being in a long-term relationship with when I met him. And, I am severely happy. And with the exception of dealing with a lot of the stuff, a lot of the repercussions of the group, specifically, one of the things that my therapist and I talked about recently was the gray areas that now exist that I no longer have the group mentality and how difficult that is, because living a life where there is black and white is so much easier than living a life with gray. But it's, it's the paradox of the freedom of choice now, right? Like I can choose to live my life however I want to, while also living with the consequences of that, which are, not, the consequences aren't always fucking great, right? Sometimes they're really fucking cool. Like I end up in a really healthy relationship with a man who I love very deeply and can have honest emotional conversations with. And, also one of the best things about him is I can't manipulate him, which is really nice. Which is something I could do with my ex-husband pretty easily. But, my therapist looked at me one time because I started crying when we were talking about this. And she looked at me and she said, Lauren, are you so afraid of making a mistake that you would rather just be told what to do? Right. So that's the place where I'm at now, is dealing with the fact that my living as a human being is gray, right? It is not black and white. And if it is black and white, there's probably something wrong, because I was not made as a, carbon copy of my outpatient counselor. I cannot live her life.
Yeah.
And, are there days where I would rather, go back in time and be willfully blind and still have the black and white? Yeah. And that's probably because I did something that was shitty and now I have to live with the consequences of that action. But I would still be living in mediocrity, right? Because even though the mission statement apparently says, we don't accept mediocrity, that's what you live. But it's masked with the love bombing and the breaking into abandoned buildings and blowing up propane tanks in national forests or jumping off of cliffs, all these adrenaline rushy things.
Yeah.
It's really easy to mask that mediocrity with adrenaline. Really, really easy. Because I was not happy for so long, but refused to accept it, or was like, I'm not happy because there's something wrong with me.
Yep. I'm not working the program hard enough. I
don't have a good enough relationship with my higher power. So that's the thing is like, life isn't always, fucking rainbows and sunshine. Like sometimes it's not fun, but I am so much freer and so much happier now that I don't have a life controlled by somebody else. Look, as long as I'm keeping the devil cool in hell, like there's not much else I can ask for.
Yep. You're definitely doing a service there.
Look, and that's what my job as a woman is to be of service to some male figure.
Yes, absolutely.
In my recovery from enthusiastic sobriety programs, I've become a very sex positive person.
Mm-hmm.
And that is specifically to help me cope with all of the bullshit that was shoved down my throat, not only from the program, but also from my mom.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different thing.
Right.
and finally being able to honestly own a very intimate piece of my life has been such a positive and freeing experience that I want other people to know that. Right. Like sex is not dirty. It's not weird. It is inherently human. And with the consideration of those that are asexual in mind, like, do you, baby? Like, I'm not here to judge.
Slut it up.
Listen, that's the thing. That's all you got to do. Go
slut it up.
Go safely sport fuck. Like, go do what you got to do. Get your experience in there. And then, if you find a person that meets you,
have lots of orgasms.
Have lots of orgasms before you turn 50.
Yes. Yes.
Because whatever happens in your bed happens in your bed and with your consenting adult partner. Like nobody else needs to be involved.
Yep.
Consent is real.
Yes.
Shout out to porn. Incorporate it into your sex life.
Yeah. And if you watch porn and enjoy it, that doesn't make you a sex addict or a porn addict.
If you enjoy sex, it doesn't make you a sex addict.
Right.
Thank you for joining our sex ed episode.
Yeah, for real. Well, let's shut this thing down. This has been incredible.
This was so much fun. And so you guys are the best. I am infinitely grateful for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Really. Because I'm going to cry because, again, I'm a little fucking crybaby. But
you're going to make me cry. I'm a crybaby, too. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad we made this happen through our 9,000 emails.
Yeah.
It's just been incredible. Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah. We'll see y'all on the flip side.
All right. Bye.
Hey.
Well, that's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed Lauren as much as I did. She is delightful. We had so much fun. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you heard something that helped you. And as always, we see you, we hear you, and we believe you. We always believe survivors. And I want to say thank you to this amazing community of survivors. You probably didn't know it, but you have all been there for me over the past couple of months. And thank you to my co-producer, Adam. And we will see you next week. Bye.